My son scheduled his wedding on the exact day of my knee surgery, without telling me. His fiancée said, "It's just one day." I said, "And this land?" Still in my name. I wasn't on the guest list, but I was the co-owner mother recovering in the bridal suite. They cut me from the seating chart. I cut him from the will. The bride's father threatened legal action. I handed him the lease with my signature. My son said, "You ruined the wedding." I said, "I built the ground you stood on." All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. I found out about the wedding date on Facebook 2 hours after I scheduled surgery to walk again. The appointment confirmation pinged into Evelyn's inbox at exactly 9:42 a.m. Her surgeon's office had sent over the pre-op checklist, post-op care calendar, and a little digital confetti animation, like her knee replacement was a party invitation. She smiled at the screen, knees aching beneath her wool slacks, and whispered, "Finally." It had taken 18 months of waiting lists, 7 months of cortisone shots, and one particularly humiliating fall in a Target parking lot before she allowed herself to commit. This surgery wasn't cosmetic, and it wasn't optional. It was her way back to the walking trail, the farmer's market, and, if she dared dream, dancing. She stood slowly, favoring her left leg, and reached for her cane. The teak handle felt familiar, a symbol of endurance, but her fingers curled around it with quiet finality. This would be the last spring it followed her. By noon, she was home, heating soup and replying to a "congrats" email from her old vice principal. She nearly missed the text from her niece, Dana. It blinked on her phone between recipe tabs and a sale alert from Macy's. "Dana, is it true Adam's wedding is the same day as your surgery?" Evelyn blinked. Her soup spoon stilled mid-air. She read it again, then again. There had been no wedding date. Not officially, not in the conversations where Evelyn had asked, gently and repeatedly, for an update. Last she heard, Adam and Amanda were thinking spring. With a practiced calm honed by 34 years in public education, Evelyn opened Facebook. There it was. A grid of photos, golden hour engagement shoot, rustic filter, all smiles and florals. The caption read, "Save the date, 4.22. The countdown begins." Her breath caught, shallow and sharp. She checked the comments. "Finally happening. So excited for you two. You're going to be the most gorgeous bride." Dozens of hearts, fireworks, congratulations. No tag for Evelyn, no mom in the caption. Not even an emoji that might suggest a mother existed at all. She checked the date again. April 22nd, the exact date she'd scheduled her surgery just that morning. Evelyn closed the app, set her phone down, and stared at the blank corner of her kitchen where she used to hang the family calendar. It had been empty since Adam moved out. She walked stiffly to her desk and opened her planner. Handwritten in blue ink on April 22nd, 8:15 a.m., arrival for surgery. Knee. The exclamation mark now looked naive. She dialed Adam's number. It rang. Once, twice, straight to voicemail. She didn't leave a message. Instead, she stood there, the line gone dead in her palm, as the silence filled her ribcage like water. Not anger, yet. Not heartbreak. Just a sinking clarity. He didn't forget. He didn't overlook. He just didn't think she needed to know. Later that evening, Evelyn sat in her reading chair, Kane resting beside her like an old friend, and reread her surgery documents. Every word, every instruction, felt like a promise she'd made to herself, one that had now been treated as interference. Gloria called around 8:30. Her best friend, retired nurse, full of brass and loyalty. Evelyn didn't say much, but Gloria heard it anyway. "You okay?" she asked. "I will be," Evelyn said. "I just need to make some changes." "Changes like what?" Evelyn looked out the window toward the darkness beyond the porch. "I'm not canceling my surgery." "Good," Gloria said. "You shouldn't have to." There was a pause. A long one. "I am, however," Evelyn added slowly, "changing the location of my recovery." "Where?" "In town," Evelyn said. "A place I have partial ownership of." She could practically hear Gloria's eyebrows rising. "Wait, Adam's wedding venue?" Evelyn smiled, faint but sure. The bridal suite has a soaking tub and direct elevator access. Gloria let out a low whistle. You are something else. No, Evelyn said, voice steady now. I'm someone's mother. And it's time he remembered that. That night, Evelyn opened her laptop, canceled her physical therapy appointments, and rebooked them at a private facility just 10 minutes from the venue. She stared at the confirmation screen for a long time before whispering to herself, let's see how inconvenient I can be. I raised a man who calls my surgery an inconvenience. The call came at 10:16 the next morning, just as Evelyn finished steeping her tea and settling in to review her post-op care packet. The name flashed across her phone screen like it belonged to someone else. Adam Carter, her son, her only child, the same boy she once walked to speech therapy in the rain, the same man who now used voicemail like a moat. She answered on the second ring, voice calm. Hello. Hey, Mom. Adam sounded rushed, too chipper, like he was already bracing for friction. Sorry I missed your call yesterday. Things have been hectic. I saw Dana texted you. Look, I meant to tell you sooner, but the venue had a cancellation and we had to lock in the date fast. April 22nd was the only Saturday left this spring. Evelyn stared at the ceramic glaze on her mug, watching steam rise in tight spirals. You didn't call. I was going to. We were just finalizing things. Amanda's parents have been handling most of the coordination and… He paused, recalibrated. I mean, it's not ideal, I know, but rescheduling your surgery isn't the end of the world, right? There it was, like a pebble tossed through stained glass. Not the apology, not the acknowledgement, just the tidy assumption that her pain, her body, could be shuffled like an afterthought on a catering list. I see, she said. Mom, I'm not saying it to be rude, I'm just saying, if you can push the surgery, even a couple weeks you won't miss anything. You'll be more comfortable at home, and we don't want you stressing the wedding day. We? She asked gently. He faltered. Amanda and I. Evelyn stood slowly, knee stiff, her cane leaning against the wall. She looked out the window, the sunlight catching the edge of her porch swing. Thank you for calling, she said. I hope the venue gives you everything you paid for. A beat of silence. Then, you're not mad, are you? She could hear it in his voice. That childlike need for her to smooth over his selfishness, to patch the moment like she patched jeans, feelings, and college applications for years. No, Adam, she said softly. Not mad. Just awake. She ended the call before he could say more. That afternoon, Gloria arrived with a canvas tote full of medical supplies and sharp opinions. She wore her retired nurse scrubs like armor and plopped onto Evelyn's couch without waiting for tea. Well? Evelyn relayed the call in clipped beats, each one a stitch of disappointment. Gloria listened, her jaw tightening with every detail. Did he actually say rescheduling your surgery wasn't the end of the world? Evelyn nodded once. Gloria snorted. You went 34 years without a sick day, and this is the thanks you get? You fed that boy organic applesauce before it was trendy. I don't need an apology, Evelyn said. I need a strategy. Gloria grinned. That's the spirit. They sat in a calm, loaded silence for a few minutes before Evelyn unfolded a printed copy of her new recovery schedule, complete with the private facility she'd booked just outside city limits. Gloria squinted at the address, then tilted her head. Wait a minute. Evelyn looked up. This location. Gloria leaned closer, tapping the sheet. That wedding venue. The Marigold House. It's next door to this, right? Evelyn's lips curled slowly into something between amusement and foresight. Gloria blinked. Number wait? Isn't that the same land? Evelyn stood and walked to her file cabinet. She pulled out a stamped copy of the co-signature deed from 6 years ago. I still hold 49%, she said, and weekday rights. Gloria stared at the paper, then at Evelyn. Oh my God, she whispered. You could recover. At his venue. Evelyn turned toward the window, light catching the gold trim of her reading glasses. I plan to, she said. And this time, she didn't whisper. They built a venue on my name, then crossed me off the list. 6 years earlier, the land had been nothing but grass and memory. a 3-acre patch Evelyn had inherited from her father, nestled just past the tree line off Route 38. It wasn't worth much, until Amanda's parents came knocking with blueprints, projections, and big promises. "We want to turn it into something timeless," Amanda's father had said, all charm and eye contact. "Not just for our daughter's future, but for the community." They didn't have enough capital to secure a commercial land loan. Evelyn had stepped in, not because she cared about rustic weddings or Pinterest-ready pergolas, but because Adam had asked. Earnestly. "Please, Mom," he'd said, holding her hand across her dining table. "This is important to Amanda. It'll mean a lot if her parents know you support them." She remembered how he said them. Not me. Not us. Them. Evelyn co-signed the lease, signed over usage rights with boundaries, and retained 49% stake in the LLC, enough to keep oversight, not enough to run the show. She even let the venue carry her grandmother's name, the Marigold House. Now that name was printed on linen wedding invites, and Evelyn, own name? Omitted from the guest list. The deed copy lay on her dining table beside a manila folder of documents she hadn't touched in years. As Gloria read through the usage clauses, her brows arched so high they nearly met her hairline. "You have weekday veto power?" Evelyn nodded. "And access to the bridal suite unless otherwise booked." The clause was written for potential investors who'd need to tour high-end clients. Never got used. Gloria grinned. "Until now." Evelyn folded her hands atop the contract, the edges of her mouth set firm. "They wanted to pretend I'm not part of this, so I'll remind them whose name is still stitched into the foundation." She called the property manager at 3:12 p.m. "Margot?" she said pleasantly. "Oh, Mrs. Carter, what a surprise." Evelyn heard papers shuffle in the background, the click of a mouse, the slight panic of someone unprepared for a stakeholder call. "I'd like to schedule my occupancy," she said. "Bridal suite, full access, Friday through Monday." A pause. "That's during the wedding weekend." "I know." Margot hesitated. "Should I notify the family?" "No need," Evelyn said, voice cool but kind. "Just mark it in the system. This is a weekday usage booking. I'm following protocol." Margot cleared her throat. "Of course, I'll update the calendar." Evelyn hung up before the woman could ask why. That evening, she stood on the back porch while Gloria brought out tea. The sun dipped low behind the pine trees, painting the porch rails in streaks of honey gold. "They used your name to get the deal," Gloria said, "then wrote you out like a footnote." Evelyn didn't answer. She just watched the wind stir the marigolds in her garden. The real ones. The ones she'd planted in her mother's old watering cans. "They forgot," Evelyn murmured, "that I built the soil they're standing on." Later, she opened her laptop and updated her physical therapist with the address change. "Private recovery location secured," she typed. "Please note on chart, patient will remain stationary, supervised, and fully supported." She attached a map pin, right on the venue grounds. At 9:03 p.m., her phone buzzed with a confirmation email. "Marigold House, suite reservation, April 21st to 24th. Booked by Evelyn M. Carter." Evelyn leaned back in her chair, pressed dial, and left one final message on the venue voicemail. Her tone was clear, businesslike. "This is Evelyn Carter. Just confirming I'll be occupying the bridal suite next weekend, all in accordance with the signed agreement, recovery-related. I'll be arriving Friday morning. Please prepare the room accordingly." She ended the call. Then she smiled. Not wide, but real. "They wanted to erase me. I left a reservation with my name on it." The white Suburban pulled into the gravel lot of the Marigold House just after 8 a.m. Friday morning. It was quiet. Too quiet for a weekend that was supposed to be filled with champagne toasts and curated perfection. Evelyn adjusted the seatbelt strap across her chest and exhaled slowly as Gloria eased the SUV into a spot near the side entrance. The scent of lavender from a nearby planter drifted through the open window. Funny, Evelyn thought. They'd used her favorite flower in the landscaping. She just hadn't known. In the back seat, a portable compression machine hummed softly beside a stack of folded therapy towels, a week's worth of post-op supplies, and a small cooler labeled Ice Packs AM/PM. Gloria turned off the engine and glanced at her. You ready to walk in and claim your space like the queen you are? Evelyn didn't smile. She nodded once. Let's make sure they know I'm not a footnote. Gloria grabbed the duffel bag with Evelyn's medications while the physical therapist, Rachel, mid-30s, sharp and kind-eyed, opened the other door and offered her arm. Take your time, she said gently. Evelyn stepped down onto the gravel with the steady, deliberate grace of someone who'd already fallen once this year and didn't intend to again. The cane tapped softly as she crossed the threshold. Inside, the scent shifted from lavender to lemon polish and peonies, fake ones, perfectly placed on every shelf. The bridal suite was just off the main hall, behind French doors with gold-lettered signage that read, "Private, reserved for bridal party only, not today." A young staffer with a headset and clipboard stood in their path like a gatekeeper. He blinked when he saw the medical bag. "Can I help you?" "Yes," Evelyn said, handing him the printed contract. "This is my name, and this is the suite I reserved." He frowned, scanning the page. Then again, one moment." He stepped away, muttering into his headset. Rachel leaned in. "You'd think he just saw a ghost?" "Not a ghost," Gloria whispered, unpacking a portable stool and handing Evelyn her water bottle. "An ancestor." 10 minutes later, the property manager, Margot, hurried in, looking flustered and too aware of every legal line she'd skimmed earlier that week. "Mrs. Cart. Of course, it's just a bit unconventional, but yes, you're absolutely within your rights." "I know," Evelyn said plainly. "Please ensure the fridge is cleared and the blackout curtains are functional. I'll also need the guest elevator code. My therapist will be coming in and out daily." Margot nodded, pen shaking in hand. "Yes, of course." Evelyn stepped through the suite doors as they opened. The bridal suite was a curated dream. Soft blush walls, antique vanity, and a four-poster bed dressed in white and cream. Evelyn's eyes flicked toward the pale gold ottoman in the corner. She walked over and sat down, slow but decisive. "This'll do." Rachel began setting up the compression unit beside the bed. Gloria fluffed the pillow and adjusted the portable ramp for wheelchair access. Margot hovered awkwardly at the door. "If there's anything you need?" "There is," Evelyn said, standing slowly. She crossed to the vanity, pulled a folded note from her purse, and walked to the suite's outer door. With a strip of floral tape from her bag, she affixed the note in the center of the panel. It read, "Please respect post-operative recovery. Thank you. Evelyn M. Carter." She stepped back, eyes steady on the ink. From down the hall, a distant voice rang out, young, sharp, and unmistakably irritated. "Why is there medical equipment in the bridal suite?" Evelyn didn't flinch. She turned to Gloria and calmly said, "Sounds like the bride's here." Gloria cracked her knuckles. "Then let's begin." She threatened to call security. I reminded her of the deed. The knock at the door was abrupt. 3 sharp raps, impatient and insistent. Evelyn, who had just finished her second round of therapy stretches and was sipping chamomile with a lemon wedge floating perfectly at the top, didn't look up right away. Gloria glanced toward the door with a low hum of warning under her breath. It wasn't a staff member this time. The knock didn't carry the polite rhythm of someone delivering towels or checking in. This was entitled Energy, frustrated, high-heeled, and impatient. Evelyn set down her cup, adjusted the velvet robe draped across her lap, and said evenly, "Come in." The door burst open without a pause. Amanda stood in the threshold like she owned more than just the dress hanging in the suite down the hall. Her face was a careful composition of bridal polish and fury barely concealed beneath faux lashes. She took 2 stiff steps into the suite, eyes darting across the cooling machine, the whiteboard of Evelyn's medication schedule, and the compression boots humming gently at the base of the bed. "What?" Amanda began, voice tight and brittle. "Is this?" Evelyn raised an eyebrow, not unkindly. "Post-operative recovery." "You're recovering in the bridal suite? This is my space, my wedding weekend. We booked this venue months ago. And I reserved this room under the clause I helped write 6 years ago," Evelyn replied, tone calm and even. "Weekday use with full access to non-event hours. It's all in the contract. Have a seat if you'd like to read it." Amanda didn't sit. Instead, she planted herself beside the bed, voice sharpening like glass dragged over tile. "You didn't even have the courtesy to warn us. You just showed up like this is some kind of power move." Evelyn blinked slowly. "You didn't have the courtesy to tell me when you were getting married. We seem to have misunderstood each other's definitions of respect." From the chair near the window, Gloria coughed pointedly. "We'd be happy to forward the updated legal documentation if your family's confused." Amanda turned to her, nostrils flaring. "Are you her lawyer?" "No," Gloria said smoothly. "I'm her spine. The one you keep trying to pretend doesn't exist." Amanda's eyes narrowed. "I'm calling security. This is harassment." Without a word, Evelyn reached for her phone, tapped a voice memo, and played a saved recording aloud. The voice of her attorney flowed crisply into the room. "As per Clause 9C of the Standing Co-Lease, Evelyn Carter maintains legal access to the bridal suite for weekday use, Friday through Monday, so long as her occupancy does not interfere with scheduled contracted event hours. This includes personal or medical use." The room was silent for a beat, the compression boots resuming their steady hiss-pause-hiss beneath the lull. Amanda stood completely still, absorbing the words. Evelyn gently turned the volume down and placed the phone on the side table beside her tea. "I'm not here to ruin anything," she said, not rising. "I'm here because this is where my name still matters, even when I don't get a seat at the table. I'm not disturbing your celebration, but I won't be erased from the foundation I helped pour." Amanda's cheeks burned a blotchy red as she glanced at the door, as though trying to locate an invisible audience. "You've made this so difficult," she said quietly, her voice straining. "Adam's humiliated." Evelyn looked at her with a calm so deep it bordered on silence. "Then perhaps Adam should revisit what humiliation looks like, because I've been living it for weeks." With a clipped exhale, Amanda spun on her heel and stormed out, heels echoing down the hallway like fading threats. Gloria stood and peered after her, then turned back to Evelyn. "That was fun. What's next?" Evelyn reached for her iPad and opened a meal delivery tab. "Lunch. I placed an order with the venue's chef this morning." Gloria's brows lifted. "Amanda's chef?" Evelyn nodded once. "He accepts private weekday clients. I paid in advance." A few minutes later, as trays clinked outside the door and the scent of seared lemon trout wafted into the suite, Evelyn took her first bite and heard Amanda's voice echo faintly from the hallway. "Why is my chef cooking her lunch?" Evelyn dabbed her lips with a linen napkin and replied, almost to herself, "Because I got here first. I changed his diapers. I don't owe him discretion." The knock this time was softer. Not timid, but cautious. As if the person on the other side wasn't sure which version of Evelyn he'd find. She didn't respond immediately. Gloria, seated beside the bed with her feet tucked under her, raised an eyebrow. "You want me to tell him you're resting?" Evelyn shook her head once and adjusted the robe around her knees. "Let him in." The door creaked open, and there he was. Adam, her only child, now standing like a stranger with guilt stitched across the lines of his jaw. He hadn't shaved, and the collar of his dress shirt was creased like he'd rushed to throw it on. His eyes scanned the room, lingering for half a beat too long on the therapy bands, the portable cooler, the scent of eucalyptus oil still clinging to the air. "Mom," he said, his voice already preloaded with apology, or maybe performance. "Can we talk? Alone?" Gloria stood without protest but not without comment. "I'll be right outside," she said, gathering her novel and giving Adam a look that held no warmth. The door clicked shut. For a moment, Evelyn and Adam simply looked at each other. The distance between them was less than 8 feet, but emotionally it spanned years. "You didn't return my call," he said. "You didn't return mine," she replied, "when I found out about your wedding date on social media." He exhaled, pinching the bridge of his nose. "It wasn't intentional. Amanda wanted to announce it quickly, and things moved fast. I had surgery scheduled that same day. You knew. I didn't think—" He paused. "It's just a day." "To you, maybe," she said, voice low. "To me, it's a milestone I fought for. You don't know what it feels like to lose parts of your own body to pain and then claw your way back. And now that I'm here, breathing through every stretch and step, you're embarrassed." He blinked, taken aback. "That's not fair. I'm not embarrassed by you." "No?" Evelyn asked, tilting her head. "Then what exactly am I doing that's so shameful? Recovering? Existing?" He didn't answer. Evelyn's voice didn't rise, but it deepened. "When you were 5, you had a fever so high I slept in your bed for 3 days straight, just to keep a cold rag on your head. When you were 16 and too angry to talk to anyone, I sat on the porch for hours until you were ready. I changed your diapers. I taught you to tie your shoes and parallel park." Adam's face stiffened. "You're making this about you?" She smiled, not cruelly, but in disbelief. For once, a long silence settled between them. Then Adam shifted, clearly trying to recover ground. "Look, this is supposed to be a joyful weekend. Couldn't you just not escalate things? People are starting to talk. Amanda's parents are furious." "I don't answer to Amanda's parents," Evelyn said, pulling a file folder from the side drawer of her nightstand. "And I certainly don't answer to people who treat me like an eyesore." He didn't take the folder right away, so she reached out and pressed it into his hands herself. "What's this?" he asked, frowning. "An update," she said. He opened it slowly, scanning the legal document inside. His eyes froze mid-sentence. "You revoked power of attorney?" "I did. 2 weeks ago." "Why?" he asked, voice cracking slightly. She met his gaze, steady and unapologetic. "Because the person who once said he'd always have my back decided I was inconvenient when his guest list got too long." Adam looked like he wanted to argue, but instead he lowered the folder, took a half-step back, and left without another word. When the door clicked closed again, Evelyn leaned back against her pillows, listening to the silence he left behind. From the hallway, Gloria's voice called through the wood, gentle and knowing. "So, how'd it go?" Evelyn closed her eyes for a moment. "I handed him the truth," she said. "Let's see if he can carry it. They scratched me from the seating chart. I scratched out their trust fund." The quiet of early morning was not lost on Evelyn. The suite's French doors had been cracked, open just enough to allow the breeze in, cool and citrus-scented from the lemon trees near the back garden. The hum of the compression machine at her ankles pulsed rhythmically, like a calm heartbeat. Beside her, Gloria read a paperback mystery novel, marking pages with sticky notes as if cataloging clues. It was Gloria who noticed first. "Did you see this?" she asked, holding up her phone and turning the screen toward Evelyn. Evelyn squinted, then reached for her glasses. A photo of the rehearsal dinner layout had been posted to Amanda's cousin's Instagram story, tagged with flair, "Final walk-through vibes." Beneath it was a digital mock-up of the seating chart, long rectangular tables labeled in a looping cursive script: bride's family, groom's friends, extended guests, vendors. Evelyn read through each column carefully. Her name wasn't on any of them. She handed the phone back and leaned her head slightly against the upholstered headboard, the faint scent of rosemary shampoo still clinging to her hair from the morning wash. "They didn't even bother with a sympathy seat," she murmured. "Not even by the restrooms." Gloria's jaw tightened. "They really believe they can cut you out while standing on the land you co-signed." Evelyn didn't speak right away. She took another sip of her tea, peppermint and honey, warm enough to calm, but not enough to distract. Then she reached for her manila envelope, pulled out a slim blue folder, and opened it across her lap. It was her estate plan. The most recent draft, printed on thick paper that smelled faintly of ink and assurance. Her lawyer, Danvers, had mailed it 2 weeks ago with a handwritten note. "Let me know if you're ready to make it official." "I'm ready now," she said softly, more to herself than to Gloria. "What are you thinking?" Gloria asked, already leaning forward, knowing the tone in Evelyn's voice wasn't rhetorical. "I'm thinking I've spent too many years assuming people would behave better than their worst instincts." She flipped to the page marked Trustee and Successor Allocation. Her son's name sat there, typed in bold, Adam Carter, Primary Trustee and Beneficiary. Beneath it, Annual Disbursements and Emergency Access. Evelyn stared at it like one might study a fading photograph. Familiar, once cherished, now dissonant. She reached for a pen. "I want your name on it," she said, Her tone clipped with decision. "Successor trustee, and I want the funds earmarked for something useful, not for champagne fountains and private tastings." Gloria blinked. "Me? You've been by my side through more life chapters than Adam's even read, and you don't treat me like I'm a subplot." Evelyn kept writing, her script steady. "Danvers can finalize the rest, but the scholarship details, I'll handle those." "What scholarship?" Evelyn glanced up. "The Carter Teaching Legacy Fund, $50,000 every year in my name and Richard's, reserved for first-generation college students pursuing education degrees. We raised Adam with a roof and room to grow. Let's give that to someone who knows what it's worth." For a long moment, Gloria said nothing. Then she placed her hand gently over Evelyn's. "You always did make the best lesson plans." They scanned the document together, line by line, like architects of something long overdue. By mid-morning, Gloria had called Danvers. He promised to bring the final update by noon. Himself. When he arrived, briefcase in hand, he didn't ask questions. He simply reviewed the notarization pages and watched as Evelyn signed them with a pen she kept in a silver case engraved with her retirement date. Danvers tapped the screen of his tablet and smiled faintly. "The update is finalized. Time-stamped and filed." Evelyn nodded once. "Good." As Danvers stood to leave, his phone buzzed. He paused to glance at it. "Interesting," he said, eyes narrowing slightly. "What is it?" Gloria asked. He held up the screen. "Amanda's father just left me a voicemail. He wants to schedule a clarifying conversation about land use and future contracts." Evelyn reached again for her tea, unbothered. "Tell him I'm unavailable." She raised the cup with a steady hand. "I'm adjusting the guest list." They booked the ceremony under false assumptions. I booked physical therapy next to the altar. The air in the main hall carried the faint sweetness of lilies and something more expensive, freesia perhaps, or imported eucalyptus strung across the arch. A string quartet rehearsed in one corner while staff adjusted floral centerpieces by half an inch in every direction. It was the kind of carefully orchestrated chaos that preceded a curated wedding, every angle meant to be Instagram perfect. And in the middle of it all sat Evelyn, reclined in a padded therapy chair with her surgical leg extended over a navy velvet ottoman. Her physical therapist, Carla, a woman in her early 40s with sleeves pushed past her elbows and a clipboard at her side, adjusted the resistance band around Evelyn's ankle and gave her a small nod. "3 more rotations," she said gently. "Then we'll move to assisted standing." "I've done tougher things with worse scenery," Evelyn replied, exhaling evenly through her nose as she began to rotate her foot in slow, deliberate circles. The staff did their best to ignore her, but their glances, curious, confused, occasionally irritated, flickered like strobes across the room. A wedding ceremony was scheduled here tomorrow, and the mother of the groom had turned the aisle into her therapy runway. Gloria stood off to the side, arms crossed, phone in hand. She didn't record anything, but the implication was enough. The venue staff had tried, gently at first, to shuffle Evelyn elsewhere. "She really needs to do this here?" one of the assistants had whispered earlier. Evelyn had responded without lifting her head. "The contract grants me weekday access to any non-prepared zone not yet sealed for ceremonial use. The aisle's open, so are the acoustics." Now, as Evelyn practiced her partial weight-bearing balance exercises beneath the main archway, soft uplights casting a halo around her, Amanda's father appeared at the double doors, his tailored blazer caught on the door handle, making his arrival clumsier than he likely intended. He approached quickly, jaw tense, cheeks flushed with rehearsed outrage. "Evelyn," he said, voice low and controlled, "we need to talk." Evelyn glanced toward Carla, then slowly turned her full attention to him. "This is a scheduled medical session, Bruce. I'd prefer to finish it before we launch into monologues." "This is highly inappropriate," he said. "There's going to be a wedding in this hall tomorrow. These exercises, machines, people, this is disruptive, and you know it." "I know I booked this time 6 days ago, in accordance with the venue's weekday availability policy," she replied, her voice as calm as the metronome Carla tapped with her foot to pace each stretch. "No ceremony rehearsals were noted on the shared calendar until this evening." Bruce's mouth twitched. "Amanda's upset. The staff is uncomfortable. Frankly, the optics of this— I'm not here for optics, Evelyn interrupted, not harshly but with authority. I'm here to regain mobility and ensure that the next time my name is omitted from a guest list, I can walk away with my head high and my spine intact. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a sharp whisper. If this continues, you're leaving me no choice but to explore legal action. Evelyn didn't flinch. Instead, she reached to the side table, lifted a crisp leather folio, and opened it slowly. Inside was the venue's lease agreement, annotated, notarized, and tabbed with bright flags marking clauses related to weekday access, shared use, and occupancy rights. She turned it, faced it toward him, and let her finger rest beneath the line she'd underlined in ink just that morning. Bruce didn't speak. Evelyn smiled slightly. "Try me," she said. "The papers are airtight." Behind them, the quartet paused mid-phrase. Carla gently helped Evelyn up from the chair as Gloria texted Danvers the time, location, and name of the latest threat. Evelyn brushed her robe smooth and walked, carefully but independently, down the aisle. Each step was a ceremony of its own. They didn't offer me a seat. I offered the guests a story. The morning of the wedding bloomed with unnatural quiet. No champagne corks, no thudding heels or rushed makeup artists. Just the sound of birds nesting in the nearby oak, and the soft purr of a well-oiled wheelchair being pushed down a stone path that had once been laid, brick by brick, under Evelyn's direct supervision. She wore slate gray linen pants, a white blouse with rolled cuffs, and a silk scarf printed with blue peonies, her late husband's favorite flower. The scarf had been folded carefully into her lap as Gloria guided her chair through the winding back path that led to the garden behind the Marigold house. Inside the building, the wedding was minutes from beginning. She could hear the faint echo of violin strings and the rising hum of guests murmuring in anticipation. The arch had been redressed with more hydrangeas since her last therapy session. Money had been spent, hours rehearsed, but none of it included her. And for the first time, Evelyn had decided not to knock on the door begging to be let in. Under the shade of a blooming dogwood tree, 2 women from the local lifestyle blog Hearth and Hilltown stood waiting. They were dressed modestly, holding tablets and DSLR cameras slung around their necks like badges of delicate authority. "Mrs. Carter," the younger one said as she approached, "we really appreciate your time." Evelyn nodded and gestured to the iron bench Gloria had placed nearby with a plush cushion. "Let's begin. I only have one story to tell, but it's a good one." The interview wasn't loud, it wasn't bitter, it was clear. She spoke of motherhood, of the way her son used to reach for her hand in grocery store parking lots, the way he asked for extra hugs on the first day of school. She recounted staying up all night baking cookies for his first science fair because the volcano kit cracked halfway through construction. Then she spoke of the erasure. "I wasn't asked what day worked for me. I wasn't offered a seat. I was expected to be quiet, grateful even, for being tolerated in proximity." The reporters didn't interrupt. They just listened, as Evelyn told the truth in layered, unhurried paragraphs about the land she co-signed, the suite she'd claimed, the therapy she scheduled around aisle rehearsals, the seating chart she never appeared on. "I didn't crash the wedding," she said calmly. "I reclaimed the space they tried to overwrite." One of the women blinked quickly, clearly moved. "What would you say to other mothers who feel like this?" Evelyn looked toward the French doors, where the faint sound of the officiant's voice began to rise. "Tell your story while you still own the microphone." They took a single photograph, her sitting beneath the dogwood tree, sunlight warming her shoulders, the venue framed faintly in the background. Evelyn didn't smile, but her expression held something firmer than joy. Resolve. As the reporters packed up, Gloria returned from the far side of the garden with a tall glass of iced tea and a nod. "They've started," she said softly. "I know," Evelyn replied. She lifted the glass, took a slow sip, and looked toward the stone path that led away from the celebration. "Let's take the long way back." They walked in silence, the gravel crunching gently underfoot. From the hall behind them came laughter, applause, and the thrum of well-practiced vows, but none of it reached Evelyn's pace. Her steps were slow, but they were her own. By the time she returned to the bridal suite, her phone buzzed twice. First, a text from her sister. "Is it true you gave an interview? It's everywhere." Then, a notification from Facebook. "Your name has been mentioned in a trending local post." Evelyn blinked. She opened the link. There it was. "Mother of the groom stages quiet protest during wedding and people are listening." In less than 3 hours, the post had over 14,000 shares. And Evelyn, for the first time in a long time, didn't feel invisible. She felt heard. They wanted to control the narrative. I offered the receipts. The knock came just before noon, sharp and practiced. It wasn't the type of knock meant for hospitality. It was negotiation disguised as politeness. Evelyn glanced up from her tablet. She'd been reading the comments under the viral post, her reading glasses resting halfway down her nose. Some were heartening, others defensive. But the tone, overwhelmingly, had shifted. People were no longer talking about lace runners or signature cocktails. They were talking about silence. Gloria opened the suite door with a half smile already locked in place. Amanda's parents. They brought backup. Evelyn smoothed the lapels of her buttoned cardigan and sat up straighter. Of course they did. Guilt usually travels in pairs. Bruce entered first, flushed, lips tight, his tuxedo jacket still draped over one arm like he hadn't decided whether to fight or charm. His wife, Valerie, followed closely behind, holding a tablet in a white leather case and a printed article from the local outlet folded in half, the headline highlighted in yellow. "Evelyn," Valerie started, her voice papery but pointed. "We thought it would be wise to speak privately, before this narrative takes root." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "It's already rooted. You're here trying to prune it." Bruce stepped forward, hands held out like an usher diffusing a crowd. "We understand you're upset. You have every right to feel overlooked. But the post, these interviews, they're painting a picture that's not entirely fair to Amanda or Adam." "Do you want fairness?" Evelyn asked coolly. "Or silence?" There was a beat of silence. Valerie straightened. "Surely we can clarify that the seating was a misunderstanding, that your absence was voluntary. We'd like to submit a correction to the outlet. Something more balanced." Evelyn stood slowly, cane in hand, not for necessity today, but for authority. "Let me show you something." She walked to her desk, opened the side drawer, and pulled out a folder labeled "Redacted Copies for Distribution." Inside were 12 neatly organized pages, printouts of calendar invites she'd never received, emails confirming the bridal suite's availability for therapy, and the now infamous seating chart post, where she was categorically absent. Tucked into the back, her surgery appointment confirmation, and a dated letter from her orthopedic specialist explaining the post-op timeline. Atop them all sat a crisp copy of the venue's shared lease agreement. She handed the entire folder to Valerie. "This is what balance looks like. Receipts." Bruce didn't move. Valerie's hand hovered for a moment before she took the folder. "You're really going to make this public?" Evelyn looked her in the eye. "Number you already did. I just corrected the record." Bruce exhaled. "This could really hurt the venue's reputation." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Then it's a good thing it was built on my signature. Reputations are harder to erase than mothers." The silence thickened, and when they finally left, Valerie clutching the folder to her chest, Evelyn returned to her chair without fanfare. Gloria, perched nearby, lifted her iced tea in a toast. "To grace with fangs," she said. Evelyn chuckled. "To memory with documentation." Later that evening, the wedding party's Instagram captions began to shift. Hashtags were trimmed. Mentions went missing. The photographer's carousel of images had fewer smiling guests than expected. At 8:17 p.m., Evelyn's phone buzzed. A text. "Adam, you humiliated us." She stared at the screen, lips pursed. Then, without ceremony, she replied, "Evelyn, no, I healed." She powered off the phone, not to avoid fallout, but to mark the conversation closed. In the quiet that followed, Evelyn picked up her tablet, opened a blank document, and titled it, "Legacy, What I Leave Behind When They Erase Me." Tomorrow, she'd write. Tonight, she'd rest. The narrative was no longer theirs. It was hers. They acted like I didn't exist. I left them a printed timeline. The elevator ride to her condo was slow, just the way Evelyn liked it. A mechanical pause between chapters. She stood unaided this time. No chair, no Gloria's arm beneath hers, just the soft hum of gears and the steady rhythm of her cane tip against the brass floor panel. A thin man in a denim jacket offered to press her floor, but she shook her head, grateful but firm. "I've got it," she said. Outside, the city moved on. Cars passed. A cyclist sped by with earbuds in. Somewhere in the unit above hers, someone was cooking onions, sweet and sharp, the scent curling through the hallway like a memory. Evelyn opened her door to silence, not emptiness. There was peace in the order now. Pillows fluffed, blanket folded at the arm of the chair. Her orchid by the window had bloomed overnight. In the kitchen, Gloria was already unpacking the small grocery bag they'd picked up on the way home. Oranges, crackers, 2 bottles of elderflower tonic, and a thin envelope she'd tucked between the kale. "You get the mail while I was in the store?" Evelyn asked, towing off her shoes and slipping into her house slippers. "I got more than the mail," Gloria replied. She held up a black mat frame, sleek, minimal, serious. Inside it, the printed copy of Evelyn's trust revocation, her name centered in bold, the signature crisp and unwavering. Gloria placed it on the mantel like a medal. "I figured if they're going to pretend you're not here," she said, "you should take up space anyway." Evelyn didn't laugh. She just stood there, throat full, eyes dry. She reached out, touched the edge of the frame with one knuckle, and nodded. "They tried to erase me," she murmured. "So I left them a timeline. Paper holds better than memory." She moved toward her writing desk, the one Charles had carved the legs for before arthritis claimed his fingers. It creaked when she opened it, same as always. Inside was a stack of fresh stationery and one unopened letter. From the corner of her eye, Gloria watched her. "You okay?" Evelyn ran her thumb along the edge of the envelope. "I'm not angry, just done apologizing for being present." Gloria poured 2 glasses of tonic and handed one over. "You didn't have to crash the wedding. You just let them see what happens when you refuse to disappear." They clinked their glasses softly. No toast. No performative slogans. Just solidarity in the sound. An hour later, as dusk settled its golden weight across the living room, Evelyn sat down to write. Finally. Her laptop glowed quietly. She opened a blank document titled, "What I Kept When They Left Me Out." But before she could type a word, her phone rang. Unknown number. She nearly let it go. But something tugged. She answered with a cautious, "Hello?" The voice on the other end was older, hesitant but steady. "Mrs. Carter?" "Yes." "I'm sorry to call out of the blue," the woman said. "My name's Joanne. I read the article, the one about the wedding, and the interview. I just wanted to say, well, I'm in the same situation. My kids keep making decisions like I'm just a dusty obligation." Evelyn straightened in her chair. Joanne continued, voice wavering now. "I've been thinking of updating my will, setting some boundaries, but I didn't know where to start. Then I saw what you did. Would you talk me through it? Or maybe help me do what you did?" Evelyn closed her eyes for a moment, breath deepening. Not from fatigue, from recognition. She looked toward Gloria, who mouthed, "Who is it?" Evelyn smiled. "Joanne," she said. "I'd be honored to help." She reached for a notepad, drew a fresh line down the center, and titled the page, "Motherhood. Underrated, not unwritten." A new chapter was unfolding, and this time, Evelyn wasn't writing alone. Their lawyer called. I gave him my updated voicemail. The call came during Evelyn's afternoon tea, just as the steam curled over the rim of her floral china cup and NPR hummed gently from the kitchen radio. She didn't recognize the number, but she didn't flinch either. Numbers she didn't know had recently become more interesting than those she did. She let it ring twice before answering, tone serene. Evelyn Carter speaking. A pause, then a voice smoother than it had earned. "Good afternoon, Miss Carter. I'm Russell Haynes, legal counsel for the Randall family, Amanda's parents." Evelyn gently placed her teaspoon on the saucer, the porcelain pinging lightly. "Ah." The whispers have arrived. What can I do for you, Mr. Haynes? His voice tried for casual but carried a low current of caution. I'm calling on behalf of my clients to discuss the terms of your current land use arrangement, specifically the renewal schedule for weekday operations at the Marigold House. Given recent events, they're hoping to revisit the occupancy oversight structure. Evelyn smiled to herself. I imagine they are. They're concerned, Haynes continued, that the recent public attention may have muddled the original intent of your role. They'd prefer a more neutral arrangement moving forward. And I prefer tea that doesn't taste like a suggestion, she replied coolly. Silence. He wasn't used to that tone from women his firm usually phoned. Ms. Carter, he began again, slower now. Surely there's a way to de-escalate. Oh, I've de-escalated plenty. I've delegated. She leaned back in her chair, watching the wind move the tulips outside her window. You'll want to redirect all future contract and usage inquiries to my co-manager. A click of keys on his end. I wasn't aware there was a co-manager listed on the lease. There wasn't, Evelyn said, until this morning. The paperwork's been filed. Gloria Adams, retired RN, mother of 3, former HOA chair, and someone who, I might add, doesn't return calls from people who ignore her name until they need a signature. Mr. Haynes cleared his throat, then again. I'll need to review the amendment. You do that, Evelyn said. And while you're at it, let your clients know I won't be taking further calls about this. My voicemail has been updated to reflect as much. Excuse me? I believe the message says, and I quote, if you're calling to question my memory, authority, or resolve, please hang up and try someone less documented. Before he could respond, she ended the call. Across the room, Gloria was at the sideboard, labeling glass canisters of chamomile and rooibos with her usual tidy cursive. She looked up, smirking. Was that who I think it was? They want neutral ground, Evelyn said. I offered them a new landlord. Gloria's laughter was rich and warm. Well, if they want to keep pretending I'm just your chauffeur, I'll be the most informed chauffeur they've ever had. Correction, Evelyn said, pouring them both a second cup. You're a co-owner of the narrative now. That afternoon, Gloria logged into the venue's online business profile. She clicked into the About Us section. Under the faded wedding photo and the paragraph Amanda's mother had once written about rustic elegance and vineyard views, she typed a new slogan. She stared at it for a moment before hitting save. Then she read it aloud, just once, like a prayer or a promise. The Marigold House, founded on backbone. That night, as the updated site went live, the Bookings tab saw 5 new inquiries from clients who had read Evelyn's story and wanted to rent the venue for resilience celebrations. Because now, the Marigold House wasn't just beautiful, it had a spine. They gave me silence. I returned the deed. The pen didn't shake. That surprised her, given how final it all felt. The quiet kind of final, not slamming doors but sealing vaults. Evelyn pressed the tip of her fountain pen against the signature line and slowly wrote her name in full, Evelyn Jean Carter. Not Mom, not Adam's mother, just the name she'd carried longer than he'd been alive. It had been 1 year since Amanda's high heels stomped through the bridal suite Evelyn was recovering in, 11 months since Adam texted, "You humiliated us," and exactly 6 weeks since Gloria updated the website with its new slogan, "Founded on Backbone." The real work had been silent, tactical, no more posts, no more interviews, just paperwork, filed meticulously, drafted with the help of a nonprofit legal advisor and a land use planner from Gloria's old neighborhood association. The air inside the office of the Community Roots Land Trust was cool with lemon balm and copier toner. Across from her, a paralegal with a nose ring and steel gray hair watched her finish signing with quiet admiration. "Congratulations," she said, sliding the papers back into the envelope. "It's not every day we receive a full parcel with mineral and development rights intact. You're officially a donor of record." Evelyn nodded, slow and quiet. "Just make sure the clause is airtight." "It's in," the woman said, tapping the printed writer. No prior leaseholder or their direct family line may utilize the property without a unanimous vote of the nonprofit board. That language holds. Evelyn exhaled through her nose. She wasn't burning bridges, she was locking gates they never asked permission to cross. When she stepped outside, spring had just started to flirt with the edges of the city. The air held a hesitant warmth. She paused under a jacaranda tree blooming early, the petals lilac against the sidewalk like scattered confetti from a wedding no one remembered fondly. She pulled the deed envelope from her leather tote, the edges thick with fresh notary ink and embossed seals. No note, no message, just facts and finality. That evening, she stood at her kitchen counter, weighing the envelope with her palm. Across from her, Gloria stirred a pot of lemon chicken orzo on the stove, the scent rich with garlic and citrus. "You sure you want to send it?" Gloria asked, her voice more curious than concerned. Evelyn glanced down. "I don't want anything from them, but I want them to understand. Access is not entitlement." She slid the envelope into a manila mailer and wrote the address in slow, sharp print. Adam and Amanda's condo, the one they'd bought after the wedding, with money from Amanda's family, not from the trust Evelyn had closed 6 months ago. "He'll think it's a threat," Gloria muttered. Evelyn smiled faintly. "Number A threat has an ask. This has none." She sealed it. No return address, just the new title deed and the writer. Let them read it once. Let it echo for years. It arrived 2 days later. She didn't call to check, didn't wait for a reply. But she could picture it. Adam at the kitchen counter, coffee in hand, mail opened casually. Amanda standing nearby, face frozen mid-bite as she read the rider twice. And the line she'd highlighted. "Shall not be accessible by any family, direct or extended, of previous leaseholders without unanimous board approval." The silence that followed? It wasn't grief. It was comprehension, because Evelyn hadn't just reclaimed the land. She had gifted it forward, on her own terms. That night, she watered her fern, fed her neighbor's cat, and poured herself 1 glass of champagne from the bottle Gloria had chilled in quiet anticipation. Then she lifted her phone, scrolled to Adam's name, hovered her thumb, and pressed block. Her circle hadn't shrunk. It had refined. They removed my RSVP, IRSVPD to my own healing. The spotlight wasn't blinding. It was soft, warm, like candlelight distilled through silk. Evelyn stood at the edge of the ballroom stage, her notes folded in one palm, the air rich with citrus water and sandalwood candles. Behind her, a banner stretched across a garden of white orchids and navy velvet drapes. The Renewal Gala, celebrating women who reclaim their story. She didn't wear glitter or sequins, just a deep emerald wrap dress and her late husband Marcus's watch on her left wrist. Its weight reminded her that time didn't forget, and neither had she. A soft chime from the mic. "Please welcome our keynote speaker, retired educator and advocate for maternal visibility, Evelyn Carter." Applause rippled through the room like a tide, some polite, some electric. She stepped forward slowly. No cane, no escort. The sound of her heels echoed gently across the hardwood as she reached the podium. "My name," she began, her voice steady but deliberate, "was nearly erased from a guest list I never asked to be on." A beat of silence. And that's when I realized I wasn't raised to wait for permission. Murmurs of affirmation rose from a few corners of the room, subtle but real. Evelyn unfolded her notes, then tucked them away. She didn't need them. "I was once called inconvenient for needing surgery, unpresentable for healing, unavailable for celebration, and I've been asked, politely of course, to understand why that was hard for others." A few nods. One woman in the front wiped her cheek discreetly. "I say this not to indict," Evelyn continued, "but to clarify. There's a difference between stepping aside and being stepped over." The room was completely still now, except for the delicate clink of water glasses being set down with quiet care. "I attended no wedding," she said. "I wore no corsage. But tonight I am present. For myself, for the women who raise children they were never invited to celebrate, for the women who know silence isn't peace, it's just deferred mourning." Applause now. Full, open-palmed, rising from the center tables like wind catching fire. As she stepped away from the podium, the event coordinator approached, holding a glass award shaped like a blooming magnolia, in honor of a woman who reminded us all that the loudest impact sometimes comes from the most graceful silence, she said. We're proud to name this year's Community Resilience Grant after Evelyn's late husband, Marcus Carter. Evelyn froze for just a heartbeat, then blinked, smiled, and whispered a thank you she wasn't sure made it past her lips. They'd remembered him, and through that, remembered her. Back at her table, Gloria was waiting with a fresh glass of sparkling cider and her phone set to Do Not Disturb. "You lit them up?" she whispered, squeezing Evelyn's hand. "And that watch looks like it never left your wrist." "It never really did," Evelyn murmured. Dinner arrived, stuffed mushroom risotto, roasted peach salad, tiny silver bowls of minted crème brûlée. Candlelight danced on the linen as if toasting her personally. Just as dessert was being cleared, Evelyn felt someone pause behind her chair. She turned slightly. Two women in cocktail dresses leaned close, voices low. "I heard her son's wedding was a disaster," one whispered, tone dipped in sympathy, but lacquered with curiosity. Evelyn looked straight ahead. The silence felt different now, like armor, not exile. As the murmurs faded and the lights dimmed for the next speaker, Evelyn reached into her evening clutch and slipped out a folded letter, addressed to the foundation chair. The memo inside? Proposal: the Carter Fund for Displaced Mothers, securing legal aid and real estate counsel for women erased from their own families. The real RSVP had only just begun. They called it petty. I called it preservation. The sound of the ocean wasn't distant. It was immediate, just beyond the open balcony door, where wind pressed in gentle, salty gusts, and the waves broke against the rocks like applause heard through memory. Evelyn sat barefoot in her reading chair, a thick cream blanket folded over her knees, the late morning sun warming the tops of her feet. Her tea had gone cold in the mug beside her, but she didn't mind. She wasn't in a rush anymore. The folder lay open across her lap, and inside it were the final documents, notarized, certified, embossed in gold. She ran her hand slowly over the smooth top sheet, the way one might touch a well-earned diploma or the cover of a finished book. The title read, Final Disposition of Assets, Evelyn J. Carter. There were no names highlighted in yellow, no signature lines left blank. Everything had been prepared with quiet precision. The estate no longer defaulted to Adam. It flowed, instead, toward something she could still believe in, a trust for underfunded single mothers pursuing education, a home deeded to the foundation bearing Marcus's name, and power of attorney, successor rights, and trustee control. Gloria, who had never missed a therapy session, who had handled Evelyn's prescriptions with the competence of a field medic and the loyalty of a sister. She'd offered Evelyn more comfort in 5 months than her own child had shown in 5 years. "You really did it," Gloria said from the doorway now, carrying 2 steaming mugs and a small plate of croissants warmed with honey. "I half expected you to keep 1 foot in." Evelyn took the mug gratefully. "I kept 1 foot in for too long. I was waiting to feel like someone's mother again. And now? I feel like myself." They ate quietly, the crackle of crust and the ocean breeze forming a soft score beneath the silence. Evelyn's hands didn't tremble as she folded the final page and slid it into the manila envelope. On the return address label, she wrote only, E. Carter, private office, no home address, no care of, no trace of where she'd been boxed in. "You know," Gloria said, breaking the last croissant in half, "you didn't just protect yourself, you drew a map. There are women watching this, learning." Evelyn looked out across the ocean. "Then let them take the pen next." Her phone buzzed once, a single notification. Adam. 1 new voicemail. She didn't open it. She didn't need to. She could hear it without playing it. The uncertainty, the soft guilt pretending to be concern, the polished phrases, "I was young, we didn't realize, let's talk." Talk had its chance, and it had failed to arrive when it mattered. Instead, she tapped and held the screen, and hit archive. Not delete, Not block, just filed, out of reach, out of sight, like he had done to her. Later that afternoon, Evelyn placed the signed documents in her fireproof safe. She double-checked the combination, closed the latch, and turned the lock with a slow twist that felt like the final click of a vault door. As she stood, the ache in her left knee reminded her gently, this was still a healing body, but it was also a body that stood tall. She walked into her bedroom, where the framed newspaper clipping sat on the dresser beside a scented candle and a pressed magnolia. The headline still made her smile, even weeks later. Mother who missed the wedding, built the legacy instead. Next to it sat the gala photo, her emerald dress lit by chandeliers, the community resilience plaque balanced in her hands like a quiet crown. They had called her petty for showing up, for protecting herself, for rescheduling. But what they never understood, what they still couldn't grasp, was that Evelyn never canceled. She simply adjusted the timeline to one that honored her. That evening, she slipped into her sandals and stepped out onto the back patio. The horizon had just begun to blush with soft oranges and dusty violets, the sea holding it all like an old promise. Gloria joined her with a small toast of sparkling cider. To second acts, Gloria said. To first boundaries, Evelyn replied. They raised their glasses and let the clink be small but satisfying. He scheduled a wedding over my recovery. I recovered over his wedding.